So, my guest today is a scholar and a pundit at the same time. And what I want to do is today to tap into him for dispelling some fears and myths that have gripped people, I don't know for how long, eons. And it's with regards to the subjects of Rahu and Ketu, the lunar nodes. He has written 2 books, and the first book he wrote was called The 27 Celestial Portals, The Real Secret Behind the 12 Signs Revealed. And the second book, which is also something of an encyclopedia, and that's the one that I want to tap into him for, it's called The Rahu and Ketu Experience, Everything You Need to Know About Rahu and Ketu. So being that this is the self-discovery channel, and my interest is very much in giving access to people from with different tools, whether it's Vedic astrology, Jyotish, or whether it's personal development, whether it's the Shastras, something from the sacred texts that helps people to get insights into their own inner nature, so that they can become their greatest self on this planet. So with that, I want to introduce Prashant Trivedi. We call him Prash for short. So Prashant, please, welcome, and thank you so much for joining me.
Since you said your channel is called Self-Discovery Channel, right? So what I would say is, when it comes to self-discovery, when I was starting out, when I was a kid, when I was very young, I started reading things called Amar Chitra Kathas. They are these.
I used to read those.
Yeah, those are those Vedic stories, which are and that was my foundation for what happened later with me. So the thing is that what I found that in the Vedic things, there was more information about where we are, what is this plane, or who we are and what we are and who we are, everything, much more than what was there in the school textbooks. Okay. And it was much less confusing as well. So that's how I got an interest in the Vedic things. Okay. That was the beginning point. And since I went after that into a science, I was following the scientific way, which was so that was my subject in school, was science and maths. And then I ended up going to IIT Delhi, because following the science and technology. And because I did want to stay on the logical path too, along with the mythological part. So,
right.
And then as I went on and further, I found that mythology was not exactly mythology. It was my truth, MITH becomes my truthology. There was a lot of truth to it, in fact, and science to it.
Right.
And it was and if you look at the Vedic texts back, and you find that technology was more advanced then than it is even right now. Mm-hmm. So then it is it becomes that thing then whatever we know about this universe, multiverse right now, as is from the science, and what the Vedic thing is saying, the cosmology is different. So then you have to make your decision, which one are you going to go with, which one makes more sense to you, and which one is more useful for yourself personally, as a person out here, right now, So, for example, you talked about Jyotish, and there's a thing called Ayurveda. Everybody's knows it as Ayurveda now in the West. That is also part of the Vedic thing only. And the Ayurveda is all about prevention rather than cure. Okay. So anybody's on the journey of self-discovery, they should first want to know about their body and keep their body healthy and fit. That is a normal thing for any being who is on that journey to do that, a basic fundamental thing. And that knowledge again comes from the Vedic things. So in the same way, my interest in Jyotish came about through my interest in the Vedic things. And Jyotish was just one part of it. And, those books came out of that interest, the books you talked about. So.
Yes. And isn't that the beauty of the Shastras, is that they roll so much so much into one, and you have to decide. You kind of, I mean, in the end, they have been separated as well as specific lines and branches of knowledge. But there's so much woven into. I don't know. You might just take the Gita, you might just say the Shiv Puran or something, which is so relevant to the design of being human in general, right?
Yes. Obviously, because like if you have to understand our own beingness out here, who are we or what are we? Like the answers are there in the Vedic text. I mean, I found that the answers were there, all of the answers. Like there was nothing which I looked for and could not find out there. Like you talk about Shiv Puran, for example, like, and the whole concept of Shiv and Shakti comes from, in that Shiv Puran, one can find that, and that is like the divine masculine and the divine feminine. And the whole concept, like which like in the modern times right now, what are called modern times, people are struggling with the ideas of masculinity or femininity or these things, or what these actual things really are. If one delves into the Vedic text, one can, they'll throw a light on it, which will be actually nurturing and nourishing for oneself.
Raj, the thing today, and the thing I want to talk to you about today is the aspect of Jyotish which scares people so much, and there's so much misinformation, I feel, and the work that you have done through your book has indeed been acclaimed as being one of the most wide and substantial pieces of work. And today, coincidentally, is Kali Chaudas, which is the day before Diwali, which is all about bringing in the light and the light of knowledge, the light of truth, the light of our inner being. And I feel today is so appropriate then to have a conversation to dispel the myths, which keep us from being connected to that. So
the thing is that with Jyotish, what has happened is like in the last 5,000 years, what happened was like it was a science to enlighten. Okay, Jyotish means bringing things to light. Jyoti means light. And it's like bringing things to light. But what it became was like a business, So when you are running something as a business, you have to scare people. And that's when they will actually like give you the money or get this puja done or that thing done or this thing done. So like scaring became a part of that over the last 5,000 years. In the last 5,000 years, every Vedic thing has undergone that kind of twisting and turning. Like for example, yoga has become yoga now. Okay, like, and people are putting their things into a lot of that things, and they are like torturing their body unnecessarily, which they don't do.
Well, as I understand, as you know, I do, I practice yoga every day. I do Ashtanga Vinyasa, and I also teach it. And, one of the things that is very clear from my studies anyway of yoga is that the asana sides were really only designed to enable you to have a healthy body and to bring it to a place where you can sit still long enough. Because if you can't, if you're in discomfort, your body isn't fit to sit still for a period of time, you can't meditate.
That's that. I mean, the rishis, the ancient time, in the Vedic times, their whole thing about posture, when it comes down to posture, they gave a lot of emphasis to posture, because that keeping the body straight and being able to keep the body in the same place. And but for that, they didn't have the asanas or anything. They just had the normal asana. That they were just asking people to sit straight, like the kids from their childhood. And once you form that habit, then you don't need any of these things, like because their thing was about centering. Like yoga was about centering. So when you're speaking from the center, you're keeping your being in the center. That was most important in yoga. And what has happened is, like right now, if I have seen all around the yoga schools around the world, nobody talks about centering. From whatever is happening in India, even what is happening in the West, nobody talks about centering at all in yoga. And that's what the primary thing of yoga was, actually, to center yourself. Okay. So when you center your body, like that's you come to middle. That is meditation.
Right.
The word meditation comes from the word median means center. Right. The word medicine comes from the same word,
So, indeed. So, and the use of breath was also very central in the practice of yoga. In fact, I would say that, we're now moving forward in terms of this is a slight aside from the topic we're going to discuss,
Yeah.
that, we are indeed, at least as yoga teachers, and my teachers are very, very focused on having the breath be the central aspect of the yoga practice, because the breath containing, the intelligence that
Yes,
can
the thing,
validate
yes.
the
What happens actually is if you speak from the center of your mouth more and more, like in your normal everyday life, your both sides breathing becomes balanced anyways. The left and right side balances automatically.
Right.
The more you speak from the center, more your posture stays to the center. The breath automatically follows. Like this is one way to do it where you don't have to even pay attention to the breath. It'll automatically normalize and center itself.
Mm-hmm.
So because everybody speaks, so like whenever people speak, they can do a meditation all the time by speaking from the center. Okay, so it's something which one can do anytime. It's nothing like which one sits down half an hour to do. In yoga, you sit down for half an hour, 1 hour to do something. It's like something which one can do all the time.
Wow. Yeah.
So and it'll balance you, and it balance both of your breath. So the prana control automatically happens.
So show us how you do that. Can you just demonstrate that?
Speak from the mouth, like when you use the word, say center, like if you were say the word center, so you just say center,
right,
center. So in that, like your breath should come out from the center of the mouth, not from the left or the right. Whenever you're speaking, you have to make sure that the breath is coming out from the center of the mouth, not from the left side or the right side.
Got it.
Yeah. So after that, the nose will take care of itself. If you can take care of the mouth breath, the nose will automatically balance out.
Amazing.
Okay, so that is the most important thing. These are the things which rishis used to teach at the age of 5, 6, 7, when people start learning alphabet, or anything. From that point, you can start centering your mouth and your speech. And most of the accents which are there right now, like a British accent or American accent or Australian accent, are not designed to be centered. They make your mouth go left and right and twist your mouth, and so all these accents are a problem right now.
Right.
Because they don't allow you to speak properly from the center of the mouth. Even people who come on TV and are doing, like who are speaking on TV and stuff, they're not speaking from the center of the mouth.
Right.
It's just something which is not taught. So like when your jaw is loose, so you're able to open your mouth easily for speaking. So you don't have the stiff upper lip, or like, you're not speaking like this, you're not trying to speak like this, like that with your teeth closed. Your mouth is moving properly. And that means your whole being is working properly and centered. So being centered in speech is the most important part of yoga, actually. So that is the most thing which all the rishis and everyone used to put all their focus on with their students. Okay, so that is and in that kind of thing, once your left and right side balances, like a lot of mental problems, mental issues, depression, and all kinds of negative things disappear automatically. Okay, so and which makes you healthy as well. You are less prone to diseases. So in any which way, your whole self-discovery, that thing will unfold with much more ease if you just do this one simple centering thing. So, which is again from the Vedic things only.
Wow.
Text only. Yeah. So.
No, that's amazing. Yeah. Well, and it sounds simple. It sounds easy, but actually, it sounds simple, but it's not that easy. Mainly because we've learned to misbreathe in a sense. The kind of lifestyle that we have and so on tends to have us breathe almost in the opposite way to what we need to do. So
bad habits.
That kind of process to begin.
Habits, but habits can be changed with practice. You form a habit, but you can change that habit by practice. And that's why what I said, accents come in the way. I mean, in England also there's so many accents, like Cockney, this, that. From Wales to Scotland to everyone speaks. And the way they're speaking is not helping them, because the language programs your mind. Is the way you speak has a huge bearing on how your mind functions and everything. And rishis understood that. So that's why they put so much early focus on early learning in that regard. Okay, so and that should be the thing which should be the main thing in yoga, the focus in yoga, which has become yoga now in the West, but that should be the focus. The centering of the body and the centering of the speech. Both.
So I would love to do another session with you. Today we're going to talk about Rahu and Ketu,
Yeah.
and Kundalini.
Yeah.
But I will do another session with you on Sanskrit, because I have a series of questions around that.
Okay. Yes.
And the way that words are pronounced in the north of India and the south of India, how the Devanagari script is read, and therefore how it's translated in the Western tongue.
Yes.
The way the words, but that's another session. So let's talk about Rahu and Ketu. So tell me now, which myths do you want to dispel right now about Rahu and Ketu, which you feel continue to persist? Let's begin there.
Yeah, right now, most, like a lot of astrologers, when they come across, like, okay, you've come across a Rahu period, if they find that someone's chart, they see, oh, you've come across Rahu period, then they immediately say, oh, now you're in problem. Like, better do some shanti, better do some puja, better do something, better, like, wear some ring, or, like, there is a panic created whenever the dashas, if somebody's coming across Ketu dasha, for example, and then there'll immediately be a panic about it. Now you won't be able to do anything. Okay, now people are like very, very, let's say there's an image which has been created about these particular grahas, which is not what they are. Like, I mean, both these grahas, that all comes from ignorance, actually. Because Ketu is mokshkarak. Okay, now if it's something can give you salvation, it surely can't be a bad thing in the first place. Okay, so to categorize it as a negative thing is a totally nonsensical viewpoint. I mean, they are energies which can be used for the self, like Rahu and Ketu both, and which when I had my Kundalini, like when rising and stuff, when I was in IIT Delhi, I was running Rahu major period at the time, and it gave me all of that things. It gave me all that education. It gave me new learnings. It gave me Kundalini rising. It gave me all of those things. So I mean, if I'd just gone by the normal concept of Rahu, then, but I didn't, because I didn't have that fear which was attached to it. I didn't know about that anything at the time, what I'm running at the time, or what is this. So I didn't have that psychological hang up about it. But now a lot of psychological hang up has been created about these two grahas, and which has to be taken out. And that's what I try to do in my book, actually, people see them as proper, important, sane grahas. Nothing like that way. Any graha can give you bad results. Even Jupiter can, or Mercury or Sun. It's not Rahu and Ketu. Only thing is Rahu and Ketu give you more complex results. And so anything which is more complex, people consider it automatically bad. But that's not bad. It's something which is evolutionary still. You might go through a lot of experiences quickly, things like that. But again, that's not a bad thing, as long as it triggers your growth and evolution.
So it's more about, I see those two, the nodes, as being an access to personal transformation, but you have to meet them in a sense. You have to rise, wake up and kind of go, what are you asking of me?
Yeah.
And what is it that I need to shift?
Yeah.
Where does my perception need to shift?
Yeah.
And that goes with each time period, each of the Mahadashas and Dashas. Antardashas, but particularly with these ones, because they have a very sudden, they have a sort of, as you say,
fast
quick aspect. So you need to
because the reason for that is because Rahu and Ketu give results of many things. Some planet like Jupiter, it will give its own result mostly. But Rahu will give the result of the sign it is in. It'll give the result of the houses it's aspecting. It'll give the result of all the planets it's aspecting. So Rahu and Ketu give more complex results because they give combined results of many energies. Okay. So that is the only thing which is different about them than the other grahas. Okay. So that makes things more complicated. But the thing with that is that you have to be ready. With Rahu and Ketu, what the thing is that if you're ready, if you're centered, if you're balanced, if you have your lifestyle good, if you have your diet correct, if you have your posture correct, if you have your being correct, then they will really help you in the transformation, but the only thing is you have to be ready. And when you're not ready, then that's when people get the negative aspects of that fast change and that sudden changes. People can't handle that, or people cannot handle the transformation, or people cannot, it's all too much for them. too quickly. So like best thing is like if anybody's approaching any of these grahas or that thing is to be ready with the basics. Once your basics are good, your foundation is there, then they are a launching pad. Basically, from there the sky is the limit, and nothing is the limit for these. That
So,
things.
like it's an opportunity to become a master of uncertainty.
Yeah. You become like if you carry on with that thing, like whether it's a Kundalini awakening or opening the third eye or any of those things become much more easier if you are already into the basics and when these periods run. So because they're the moksha karaka, like they can take you out of the cycle of birth and death, they can take you into higher realms. I mean, all the things are possible with that. So it's definitely going beyond the sky. Like with that, sky is not the limit.
So would you say, Prash, that the Samudra Manthan event that happened that had Svarbhanu, have his head disembodied from his the rest of him, and then that gave rise to Rahu and Ketu.
Yeah.
Would you say that there is this incredible craving, like this magnetism between the two? They're always trying to reunite and connect and become whole again. Would that be the play of energies that's going on in our?
I mean, what happens is that Amrit is there, like in both. So they're both immortal energies. Okay. And the both energies are like smart. Like, I mean, Rahu was among the smart persons out there. He realized where like if you look at the story, then Rahu was the one who could actually tell where the nectar was, where the Amrit was.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a smart, intelligent energy.
Yes.
Okay. It's not something dumb or anything like that. So like that smartness, that intelligence can be utilized for going higher and and for doing the right things. And even when their head and that thing has been separated, they are still always in the like they were given the things that they'll be the same as other grahas, and they have more power than the other grahas still, and they still have the nectar in them. Okay, and they have the knowledge of the nectar, so they have all those things still. And that's why Ketu is called Mokshkarak, which can take you out of the cycle of birth and death. No other planet is called Mokshkarak. Even Sun is not called Mokshkarak. So these beings have energies which are basically giving humans a way out of the human condition and into something beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether this comes to immortality of the soul, or whether it comes to like going to higher dimensions, whether it's going out of whatever circumstances bind you on this plane. Different people have different bindings and they find themselves caught up in different situations which they can't get out of. Then if these energies come, they'll show you a way out of any situation you might be in on even this plane of existence. So that intelligence can be utilized. Like they have an intelligence in that regard.
And would you say that Rahu, for example, I'd love to talk more about Ketu because we talk so much about Rahu and less about Ketu. But for me, Ketu is infinitely fascinating because I feel that we really understand it even less than we understand Rahu. At least that's my experience for me. And I would say that Rahu would be of the two, the one that wants you to kind of get satiated, over-satiated even, with the material aspect of our existence. Before then you can, kind of go, yeah, okay, I've enjoyed this, I've experienced this, now I'm ready for something else. Would you say that to me?
No, I mean, no, Rahu is also after the nectar,
Mm-hmm.
It's not really concerned about like the material things and stuff. Like people can use it in a materialistic way.
Okay.
But it is actually also, but the thing with Rahu is that it is an 18-year period, for example, if you look at it. Yes. So it is a slower energy than Ketu. Ketu is much faster than Rahu. Ketu works in 6-7 years what Rahu can do in 18 years. So Ketu is a much more quicker energy. And whatever thing Ketu does, it does quickly and gives fast. And it makes you go deeper very quickly. Mm-hmm. So and a lot of people are not ready for that. Like some people might get certain like visions or transformative events and something under Ketu, and they just feel like that will just completely destroy their life as is right now. If they follow that, like they will not be, like everything will be uprooted completely. But the thing is, like in Ketu, if you go along with that, you will find something better on the other side. If you have the courage to follow nothing. And Ketu is obviously very interesting. And I mean, in my book, I mean, both were given half-half. Like, it's not like I didn't make like 70% of the book about Rahu and 30% about Ketu. It's 50-50. So, I mean, both have their own characteristics. And, Rahu is more like Saturn. It's a long term. It works with the plan slowly. And Ketu is more like Mars. It works quickly. And, so it has a different nature.
So another question around Rahu that I have heard people say, and very, very often,
Yes.
that Rahu Mahadasha, oh, pida aayegi, you will suffer pain. And
Yes.
to be honest with you, while I don't kind of buy into that scaremongering aspect, what I have seen objectively is that people I have known who have gone into their Mahadasha of Rahu,
Yes.
of let's say about 10 people like that, I have found at least 5 of them have actually had quite serious cancer. And and Rahu is, am I correct? Rahu is associated with cancer?
Yeah, the thing is that those kind of diseases can be caused by any planet which is in a bad situation in a chart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like even if Jupiter is exalted, like in a chart, like if people say Jupiter is exalted, and that person can have cancer too. Okay, like so. I mean, it's not like, but there is Jyotish is like a science. So like every planet can have negative energies, like to do with the 6th house or 8th house or 12th house, when those energies are coming together, and there's certain energies which cause diseases like cancer, which you can check for different planets. So it's not like it's actually ignorance which makes people say that only Rahu and Ketu, like they don't cause those things any more than any other planets. Actually, they're not disease. But the thing is that if Rahu and Ketu are much more unforgiving if you don't have your basics, right?
So what happens if you don't have? If
the foundation is not there,
you don't have all your ducks lined up, what happens if you go into, then people do tend to suffer with that. So
so basically, if you don't have your foundation right, then Rahu and Ketu are more unforgiving energies than other planets. But so that is a difference between like Rahu. Even Saturn is more unforgiving in that way. But okay, so I mean, different planets have their different natures in that regard. So I mean, so they are like that. But the point is, they do ask you to basically orient yourself in the right way. They're not against you.
Yes.
But when it comes, like, they're still for you, the energies. So it's like you have to use them for your benefit. And you're like, they're not something like. I mean, even if people are getting any disease, any person gets any disease, it's because something they're doing wrong. So you have to look within yourself and find what I'm doing wrong, or what you have to change that about yourself. Okay. So disease.
And you may not do that in time, perhaps.
Yeah.
Catch the disease.
Yeah. I mean, the point is, like because even if it's coming from your past karmas,
yes,
then still is like you still have those notions and thing in the present.
Mm-hmm.
So if you give up those notions in the present, then the disease will go. And it happens to a lot of people, even though it might happen because of the past. But if in the present they give up all those things, all those notions and whatever they have to do, and then the disease goes too. And like everybody, like doctors and stuff, are very amazed, like what happened, like it was there but it's not there anymore. I mean, it has happened with cancers and all kinds of things. I mean, those things have been there and then they've not been there because people have changed. So that internal change is the most important thing, because external things will only come from your internals.
Yeah.
So when you make that shift internally, that's what the Vedic thing is about. Always prevention is better than cure. Like you make all the changes internally before anything can even strike from outside. So like if people prepare for like a Saturn period or a Rahu period or Ketu period by becoming more holistic and becoming more, that's a good thing.
Yeah.
It's not a bad thing at all, but that should be the thing anyways. Even if those periods were not coming, you should do that anyways. But if those are coming and you're doing that, then it's even better.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the idea of self-awareness then is what you're saying is really important, to become self-aware so that you can listen for what life is calling forth from you.
Yes.
And rather than bury your head in the sand, or even, the idea of taking responsibility for your actions, for the choices that you make.
Yeah, but because you have, like, because these days people don't even realize that they're a being. People think that my name is so and so, so I'm that. I
Mhm.
work in so and so place, so I'm that. So
Mhm.
this is my profession, or this is my that thing. This is how people label themselves. They don't understand that you're not any of these things.
Yeah.
You're not a barber or that thing, or a professor or any of these things. You are actually a being, and all you have got is a body. Okay, right now, that's your tool, and you are a being, and you are on in somewhere. Like this is some place you are, and you are surrounded by this thing. So you are inside of something. You're a being, and you're surrounded by all this multiverse around you, and which is basically you are inside of that. So that makes you realize what you actually are. That's your real situation. You're not your name. You're not any of these things. You're not your labels in society. You're not any of these things. So when you look at yourself like that, then you automatically take more responsibility for your beingness, and your beingness is not going to go away. Like even if your physical body finishes, it's going to grow old. It's going to that thing, and it's going to finish, and then your beingness will still exist, because the other bodies which are inside your physical body will come out at that time. Because our bodies are like Russian dolls, one inside the other. So the physical body is just the outer shell. Once
Yes.
it breaks, the other ones come out.
Yes.
And that other body which comes out of your body can also feel. Like right now, you can feel pleasure, you can feel pain, you can feel that body can also feel all those things, which comes out at the moment when your physical body is discarded. So, you know, so beings have to realize yourself as a self like that, then you automatically will be like worried about, or you'll take care of your future, because you know that you will exist even after this physical life is over. You'll still exist. You'll keep on existing for next million billion years. So, like then to take care of yourself or of your beingness automatically becomes a priority. Nobody else has to tell you that. Then that you better take care of yourself.
So
Yeah.
does the purpose of life become the one where it is about discovering your inner self, your deeper inner self? Is that what do you say the purpose of life is?
Yeah, I mean, for example, first, like when you were 3 4 years old. Okay, when you're 3 years old, like you suddenly come into this world and you're starting to look at things. You're seeing like what is there, what is there, what is there. Okay, like what is this? You don't know what is all this. At the time, when you're 2 years 3 years old, you don't know what is this. Like you're just looking at things, you're holding things, you're touching things, you're trying to figure this out. What is this? Where am I? Who am I? So that basic thing, like, because everybody's a being. I mean, that's a fact. Like everybody is a being. So, I mean, but to see yourself as a being, like, because earlier you will get a name or something, your parents will start calling you something. Okay, you'll have some name or something, and then start calling you by that name. Then you start to learn. Okay, these are my mother and father. Okay, now when you start giving these labels, you don't see them as beings anymore. You see that this is my mother, this is my father. Okay, now you don't see that these are beings. Like, so like you start making these distinctions at that age. What is very important is to understand that one is a being and they are beings too. Okay, and which is actual fact. I mean, nobody can deny that fact. Like before the labels, everybody's that. So once you start seeing things more in that light, everything becomes better and clearer. You don't get caught up in any kind of illusion or delusion. Okay, like, oh, this is my mother and father, so they can't do any wrong. If they do something wrong, then it affects you so much. Or like my mother and father are doing wrong. Okay, but if you understood that they're just beings and they as a being they can do anything, then you don't get that psychological pressure onto yourself.
They have their own path, they have
And
their own
like they are
journey.
separate. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean they are gonna, like, when they are gonna leave this body, they're gonna leave themselves. Nobody's gonna go with them. When you're gonna do that, you're gonna do it yourself. Nobody's gonna go with you. So all these things make you more aware of beingness. So when you deal with someone else, you deal with them as a being. Okay, so I'm not dealing with Smita right now. I'm dealing with a being. Okay, like, so it's a question of like and what so when you go into that, you automatically go more deeper inside. You come to see the characteristics of beings. So you say this being is like this, and this is their characteristic, this is how they function, this is what, not this is my father, or this is my husband, or this is my sister, or this is my uncle, or this is my, you go into beingness, and the same thing you do for yourself. You see yourself as a being, and you see your own characteristics and your own things as well in the same way. So you are the same way about yourself, and you same way about others. So you get away from all the labels about your own self, and you get away all the labels about others. Like if somebody says to me like I'm an author, or I'm a Jyotish. I just don't like that, whether I'm any of these labels. So if I play music, people say, oh, you're a musician then. Okay, like we have to rise above these labels, because finally, as a being is a holistic thing. As a being, you do everything. You're learning sciences or arts or anything, or you're eating, you're living. Everybody has to do everything. Nobody just does one thing. Everybody has to exist holistically. So as a being, you do things holistically. So like more holistic you get as a being, and more well-rounded you get, and less like these sort of schizophrenia you create for yourself. Like between material and spiritual, for example. You're talking about material and spiritual. How is it more material? Or because for me, material and spiritual are the same thing. Okay, like if you have common sense, if you are living nicely, if you can take care of material things in a proper, organized, practical way, then you can take care of spiritual things in that way too. If you don't have that sense in the material, then you won't have that sense in the spiritual either. Because what is spiritual? Spiritual means you are getting away from pain. You're getting towards more heightened states of pleasure. Okay, so in the material world also, the more common sense you have, the more you will not experience pain here. Like if you're having the right diet, if you're wearing the right clothes, if you're living the right environment, you will not get disease. That means you will not get pain. And then, like when you don't have any of these discomforts, like if you're comfortable in the material world, then that's when you can do spiritual things. If you're not comfortable in the material world, then you will always be like that. That's the last thing you can do, is do anything spiritual. So to me, both things are totally the same. Like one should not create these schizophrenias between these terms, which a lot of people are doing these days. Because like materialism doesn't mean like somebody has a lot of money or somebody's running after money, or that, like that is not materialism. Materialism means like where you actually care about your own body and yourself, and you take care of that tool which you're born with. Because you're born with only one tool, that is your body, and nothing else. That's a fact. And if you take care of it, then you are material and you are spiritual both.
And it becomes a vehicle for the expression of the different aspects and facets of your wholeness. So as you say, being an author, a musician, and somebody who's deep into astrology. So in a sense, it's like these are maybe facets of our multi-dimensional essence, if you like.
Yeah.
But you can express those, but that's not, you're not exclusively any one of those.
So like it's a diamond, like it has got a lot of cuts, and then it can shine bright from different parts, but it's not, but the diamond is a thing as a whole, it's not that just one, but the point is,
I have one here.
Yeah, yes, like crystal,
it's the central theme of my books, Karma and Diamonds, is the inner diamond.
Yeah.
And I call it the inner diamond because that's exactly as you said. That, you may choose to express that facet today, time, and then another period you may choose to express that, and then another time that. But it is who you are.
Holistically.
Yeah.
Holistically, the self. Okay, the more holistic you go about anything, that's why I don't like to separate the sciences even. Like science is not different from Jyotish, is not different from numerology, is not different from anything. Or music or maths.
They're interconnected.
Everything is connected and it's part of a whole. And the more you go into that, the more your internal rise or your self-discovery will take place more easily. The more holistic you are about things. So like some people might start doing yoga or something, but at the same time, they don't take care of their diet. Some people might take care of the diet, but they're not taking care of that thing. So it's like when things are not holistic, it's like a rubber band which gets stretched in different directions. Like you're stretching it this here and stretching this way, and then the rubber band just breaks. And that's where the psychological trauma and breakdown and stuff happens in people.
And isn't the challenge for people the fact that we're not all put together in terms of the various qualities of these 9 grahas? They some are more prominent than others. So in some people, maybe Mercury from the Geminian angle, the logical, the pure logic angle, that may be, or the kind of more mundane angle may be stronger than the Jupiterian, which then takes you. So the challenges for people in terms of bringing into balance, to kind of recognize first where am I leaning more towards?
Yes.
And more than that, to kind of overcome the resistance, because in a sense, I mean, I don't know if you'd agree with this, but in a sense, when somebody has a certain set of characteristics that has given them success
Yeah.
in life, it's almost as
In this
if
world, yeah.
they feel that this is what's right because it's given me the success. Therefore, you must also do this.
Yes,
And
yes,
it may
yes.
not be the truth for somebody else because
Yeah.
they are on a slightly different learning.
But the thing is that, like, anything which gives you success in this world right now, mostly takes away from your actual, like, physical well-being, or anything which takes away from your physical well-being or your spiritual well-being or any kind of that thing, comfort, then it's not success anyways. You know, like, if you're not growing holistically, if you're not learning holistically, if you're not taking all of your thing, like, the success in the world means nothing at all. You know, because what happens is that, like, that kind of thing, and people know that, like, that's why a lot of people who are like celebrities in this world, they are the ones who are having the most mental problems, okay, like, and psychological problems. Because what happens is that, because once you go more that path, like, people think, oh yeah, you're great, you're a celebrity or something, but internally, you know that you're not going right, like, you're not being holistic, and, you know, like, and it's whatever is coming towards you, that's not what you are. You know, there is something you need to do for yourself, and which the world does not realize. Okay, and nobody will realize that, and that's what people fall into. That, like, for example, like, right now, if people have to go after Olympic medals or something like that, right? Like, so then they'll strain their body in order to get that medal and stuff like that. But whatever torture is happening to your body, only you know. Then you are the ones who has to go through all the operations. You are the one who has to go through all the medical treatments and all of that. You know, to other people will just see the gold medal and the success and in this world, like, you know. So
Isn't that part of the journey, though?
yeah, it's not like, it's, I mean, that is a kind of thing which is in this today's age, it's promoted, but it doesn't do any good to the individual. Okay, like, you like, all you learn from that is, like, I shouldn't have done that. After all that, so whatever 5-10 years would have passed, and all you learn from that is, like, it's like hitting your head on a brick wall, and then you come to know that it hurts. Okay, I mean, that kind of learning, it's better to learn just by looking, better to learn by observing than experimenting on yourself in that way, because that's a very slow path of learning. If you're going to experiment everything on yourself, and you're going to put hand into the fire 100 times yourself to see if it burns, you know, that's not the way of learning. Learning should happen, like, if somebody else puts a hand in the fire and it burns, you should be able to learn from that. Okay, so not, because there's enough examples around here for people to learn from, what to do, what not to do, you know, if they actually observe properly, you know, if they have a learning attitude. So having a learning attitude is a very important thing. You know, like, when you observe, that you learn. Whenever you observe the world, when you observe anything, you learn from it, you know, instead of, like, causing harm to yourself unnecessarily. Yeah.
So would you say, though, that if you take the mix of the grahas, let's say,
Yeah. Yeah.
they incline you
Yes.
in a certain direction. They kind of have you. They incline you in a certain direction because of the way that they're constructed. There's a certain momentum that is gathered, let's say, when you come into existence in this lifetime.
Yes.
And and then you apply conditioning, then you apply all the layers of the, various learning and things that we go through, family values, traditions, and all the rest. So, then that inclines you a certain direction. So in a sense, it's kind of like this momentum that a person's journey, that person is on, that they can't halt.
Yeah, but that's why grahas, the word graha in Sanskrit meant Caesar.
Meant what?
Caesar. Caesar.
Caesar.
S-I-E-Z-E. Seize. It seizes you.
Seize, yes. Grasp.
Yeah, graha means Caesar. Okay, it seizes you. Okay, so the trick here is to actually step back as a being. You have to understand, you are not any planet, you are a being. Okay, all these grahas, all these nakshatras are part of you.
Mm-hmm.
They're not the controller of you. You are the one who takes the decision in the end, not them. It's you who takes the decision.
You're the master.
You're the one that's running. You are the one who takes the decision. So for that, you have to actually create a space between yourself, which is your beingness, and these energies. Okay, so you have to know, like, okay, that's what Jyotish used to do. Like, if someone knows Jyotish, then they would be running, like, I mean, Rishi would know, like, okay, they're running this planet, so this planet is giving them this kind of thoughts, and it's giving them this kind of impulses. But they knew that it is giving it to them. But they're observing that. They're not just mindlessly following that. They know what is causing that, what is giving it to them. So that knowledge is always helpful for you to stand back from it, actually.
Okay.
And to look at it objectively.
Yes.
If you're ignorant, like if you don't know what is going on,
yes.
then you'll just be seized by these things, and your mind will be just seized, and you will think that's me. It's my thought. You'll just think that it's my thought. It's coming to me, so it's my thought. Okay. But it is like something which is giving you, and why it is giving it to you, what is going on, the whole picture. That's what Jyotish was about. To give you a picture as what is happening to you and why you're getting these thoughts and what impulses, so that you can stand back from them and take decisions accordingly. So even if a planet is giving wrong impulses and wrong thoughts and whatever, it's like that in your chart, then you can actually step back from it and get away from it and not actually have those bad results.
Yes.
So like the Jyotish will say, oh, this planet was so bad for you, but nothing happened to you. You went through it because you actually you stood back from it, and that is an option everybody has got, that free will, and that option everyone has, like every being has that. So,
and that's the mastery in terms of the opportunity in terms of life, is the ability to recognize who you are
and your energies,
and that is above. That aspect of you is, if you like, supreme in a sense.
Yeah, that's a beingness. That's your beingness. That's your actual beingness. That's your actual beingness, which comes from divine itself.
Sure.
That. Yeah. So all beings have been created, and that point, that is the beingness of you. That is the thing which you are actually.
Mm-hmm.
That objective observer, the one which is looking at those things. It's not something when you are just being going along with something. Like that's what happens in society as well. People, like whatever trend is happening, people will just go into that and just become part of that just because it's happening. It's not because they have actually figured it out whether it's going to be good for them, what way is it going to lead them. All this thing has not been done. All this calculation or nothing has been done properly. So like if you do things mindlessly, then obviously you pay for that. Because every action has consequence. Like that is the law of the multiverse. Like action means consequence.
Absolutely. And that's why it's something to be responsible for. That's the kind of, for me, that's the opportunities to really connect to the inner voice, that deep, clear inner voice beyond the mind monkeys and beyond the noise of the mind, And, you said something really wonderful in the video that you did with Dr. Arjun Bai not too long ago. You talked about Rahu, and you made the connection with Goddess Durga. Durga, who is indeed, like, she's the Shakti, that incredible inner power that we each of us have access to. You connected the two. Can you talk some more about that?
Okay. Let's start with Durga's meaning. Like the word, what does the Sanskrit meaning of Durga? Durga means inaccessible.
It means, again?
Inaccessible.
Inaccessible.
Okay. Something very tough to get to. Like it's like that thing which is totally out of bounds. So it's like a goddess energy, Shakti energy, which beings can't get to. It is so far out. It is so deep. It's so beyond everything that you can't really get there. It's so that's what Durga means. Okay.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Okay, but okay, it's now so it's always best to know the Sanskrit meanings of the terms. That's why I always say it's always best to know the things so that you know what you're dealing with. Okay, now, so when Rahu is associated with that, and Rahu always likes to go for that thing, that inaccessible thing. It doesn't want to be part of the mundane, which everybody knows. Okay, that's not where its interest lies. Its interest lies in that thing which is inaccessible more, which is mysterious, which is that thing which you don't know about. All the hidden knowledge, all the things which are like real functionings, the core functionings of this multiverse, how it actually functions, that knowledge, that thing, that energy, that Shakti. That's what Rahu goes after. That's why Rahu is connected to Durga. Okay. So like Durga is like a combination of goddesses, like Parvati, Lakshmi, Saraswati. So she's like a combined Shakti which is indefeatable. Okay, which is nothing in this multiverse can defeat that. It's inaccessible, indefeatable. So Rahu is always going to try and go towards that, closer and closer to that. That its natural inclination as a that thing. So that's what one can utilize in that. So that's what the whole thing is like. So that's why the whole goddess worship and the Shakti, that thing comes out from that, and which is a very good thing. I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with that.
Why is Durga? Why do we say she's inaccessible? What's the rahasya behind that?
I mean, inaccessible. Like for example, for right now, I mean, like right now in this earth also. Okay, like we have only dug the earth 12 kilometers. Like the physical earth, we have only dug it 12 kilometers. The biggest hole which has been done on earth is 12 kilometers.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's a fact. Okay, people can go check online, and it was done in Russia. Okay, now after that they couldn't drill any further. It's so hard, the surface, they can't drill any further. So for us, like, that is inaccessible now. What lies beyond 12 kilometers on this earth, we don't know. Okay, this is inaccessible for us. Okay, so in this multiverse, there are so many things which are inaccessible for us right now. Even in this practical example, I'm just giving you a very practical example, like that is inaccessible. So that comes under Durga principle now, because it's inaccessible. You can't go there. You can put you can put a diamond drill, you can put any drill, but you can't dig anymore. So that concept one will face every time in this multiverse. I mean, like there are higher beings like rishis to whom some dimensions are accessible to them, but then there'll be some dimensions which are inaccessible to them even. So there is always this accessibility and inaccessibility everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Like for people, like there are things which are inaccessible, there are things which are accessible. Like,
and does Rahu ever achieve and attain? Does he actually ever attain his objective, his goal? Do we have an experience?
Yeah, it always gets to the inaccessible. At that time, the inaccessible thing was the Amrit.
Yes.
Okay, that was the most important thing, and it got to it.
Yeah.
It got
He'll
to
get
it.
to it. He'll get to it.
Yeah. It got to it. Okay, it's not it didn't get to it. It got to it. And Rahu Ketu together both got to it. Both are like that. It's not like Rahu is like that. Ketu is like that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, both are like that. Like so like if you are like, that's why they're called Moksha Karaka. Ketu is called Moksha Karaka because if you want to get out of the physical cycle of birth and death, and if you want to go to higher dimensions, but higher dimensions are inaccessible to you right now. So how do you do that? How do you make something inaccessible accessible to yourself? Okay, so that's where the whole magic, the trick, the everything lies. What do you have to do that? Get that. That's where the whole importance of these grahas comes in.
So how do you tune into them?
Yeah. Like if you tune in.
When you're running, I mean, I know that it's easier when you're running their time periods.
Yes.
And perhaps through Gochar, perhaps transits.
No, not transits. Like even if you're running some other major period, okay, they will come in inter periods. Like even if you're running Jupiter or Mars or Sun,
they
will
come in the Antardashas or even Pratyantars. Yeah.
Antardashas will come, so you can tune into them anytime.
Right.
Many times you can tune into them. Everybody will get opportunity.
How do you do that?
That's where like you have to understand like have your basics ready, and then understand that you will have to, whatever you have to do to achieve that inaccessible things, you should be ready to do. You shouldn't have that thing, okay, like if you have like, oh, I can't do this, I can't do that because I have this thing, or I have to do this thing or that thing. You'll have to sacrifice certain things.
So you have to be disciplined, you have to be committed, you have to be awake.
Yeah, you have to be awake. Yeah. Which is, and to go along with the transformation, because that will require a transformation.
Right.
doing that will require a transformation. It will not happen without transformation for anybody. So that one has to be ready to do, and the good thing about these grahas is that they are ready to do anything in order to.
Yeah, if you bring yourself to them in the way that they need, which is wholly, like without resistance.
Without resistance and actual things, like they're not concerned about like getting this position or that position in the world or anything like that. It is really going for the inaccessible. So like, I mean, like a lot of people, like for example, when like Nikola Tesla was there, these beings were there, and for them, like before that, we didn't know electricity. Even AC motor or anything was inaccessible to us. But now some being gets there and it becomes accessible to them. Now everybody has that. Okay. The technology for mobile phones, which you have right now, that was not inaccessible. It was inaccessible 100 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
But it's accessible right now. Okay. So things which are inaccessible can become accessible only to the beings who are working for that.
But I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah.
In the sense that with these energies, if you resist, if you're lazy, if you don't bring yourself, if you don't shape up, they'll ship you out. So it's really shaping up to enable them. To deliver. It's like to deliver their goods. What they can bring to you, you have to really rise to it.
And obviously, like, I mean, that kind of thing, and not to speculate, like right now people have not only gone 12 kilometers in the earth, but they're speculating already what is below that, and what we have a core and magma. It has been taught in school, all these things, but these things are just theories. They're not facts. Okay. Because you're not gone there, you don't know what is there. Okay. So when you're not been somewhere and you are just speaking about it, you're actually telling lies, So it is important not to lie. It's important to stay factual with these planets. Always limit yourself to the factualness. If you stick to facts, they will not cause you any problems. Like, as long as you stick to facts about everything, like right now people are saying that their Kundalini is getting awakened and third eye is opening when nothing is happening actually. So they're not sticking to facts. Okay. Now, that's when these things cause you problem. Okay. You have to stick to your actual achievement. You have to stick to your actuality where you are at. Like one should not, and Rahu Ketu are very important in that way. Rahu Ketu, Saturn, all these three planets. And Saturn also, you have to stick to facts. And Rahu Ketu also, you have to stick to facts. These three planets, they punish you if you don't stick to facts.
Right.
Okay.
So talking about that, I find that there is, with Ketu, there is so much confusion. I mean, there is, we talk about Rahu as chaos and Ketu as confusion and so on. But, Ketu I find very nebulous. I want to give you an example of how I see Ketu. So I'm a diver. I've been scuba diving for like 20 years now.
Yes.
And a few years ago, we went to Mexico, the Yucatan.
Yes.
And in the Yucatan, they have these areas called cenotes. They're like a Swiss cheese, if you like, underground.
Yes.
There are these holes that connect up the whole region. And, in some places, water runs through them. The others are just caves and so on. So we went diving in one of those. And the water was very different and interesting. It was actually really spooky. And the reason for that was it was a very narrow cave system. Yes. So we were 5 of us and we had to follow one after the other. And I couldn't see, like if my hand was like extended like this, I could not see the person in front. I had to really be focused on watching their fin, otherwise I would lose them. It was so... The whole water, the reason was the water was so blurred because salt water and clear water met in that cave. And as a result of that, it created this blurry water where the visibility was very, very limited. I'm sorry?
Yeah, like a whirlpool of sorts where there's...
Yeah, and super, super blurry. So I couldn't even see my hand in front of me. It was very... Now, normally, if we were in the ocean or in the sea, we wouldn't go diving in those conditions. But because this was a cave system that our dive instructor knew well, we were there with him. I'm telling you, it was really scary because in those caves there were snakes and there were all manner of
all things,
scorpions and all
yes.
manner of things that you could encounter. So you had to be. It wasn't for the faint-hearted. Now at that time, Ketu was with Pisces.
Yes.
It was transiting, and it was with Pisces a few years ago.
Yes.
And to me, that represents the Ketu energy in a sense. In the beginning, it kind of blurs everything for you, and you have to stay focused, and you've got to find your way through that. But you can only be inner referring. You can't look outside for the answer. You've got to look within.
Because that blindness, which like outside becomes blind. Okay. But that is the case. What I would say this is for most people right now, because when you look out right now in this world, and when people have the education system and the mind programming people have been through, that whatever you know is a lie anyways. Whatever has been told to you, whatever you know from your mind programming is a lie anyways. So you're blind anyways. Okay, right?
Prash, you're venturing into conspiracy theory land.
It's not conspiracy. Like, no, I'm just telling you, this is a fact. Like you were talking about this bloodied water. Okay. I'm just carrying on with that. That bloodied water is there in front of everybody.
Okay.
Like if a person is 17 years old or 18 years old, they will face that bloodied water. Anyways, like because nothing is clear. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of, it's not even conspiracy or anything. It's like, it's a fact. If you're a teenager in this day and age, and you will be really, really confused. Okay. Yeah, 16, 17, whenever you reach that age. And this is nothing to do with any kind of theory of any kind.
Yeah, sure, I get that.
Yeah, this is a fact. Okay. So you will have that blurriness. Okay. Which the same as that water. Okay, which you were talking about. Okay, it will be, the feeling will be the same. Yeah. Okay. But you will have to go into the inside thing to navigate through that. Okay, that thing. And that's what everybody has to do. I mean, right now, that is the situation for everybody, I would say, that bloodied water situation, which you were facing that. So Ketu becomes very important anyways for everybody to navigate through this, because right now, I mean, nothing is clear. Everything is a theory. I mean, everything is a theory, like right now, even Big Bang is a theory. These are theories. Okay. I mean, they are not facts. There's a huge difference between theory and facts. Okay. So that anybody in science will tell you theory is a theory only. Like it's nothing to do with the actual fact. I mean, anybody can make hundreds of theories about anything, but that's not a fact. So to get to the fact, one has to dive inside. And that's where I was saying the Vedic mythology thing from the very beginning, which we started. That's what helped me get to that. Like that, because it makes you go to that internal place where you can focus on the inside rather than focusing on the outside, which is very confusing. And that bloodied water is there in front of you. Like even if you're a science student, you will find out, okay, you get to quantum mechanics, and then you'll be saying that's quantum mechanics, believe me, is more than any bloody water. Like you can see outside, so it is like that, so like if you have to get to the truth and reality of things, you have to go in some other way. And that is what Ketu will help you do if you go inside.
Mm-hmm. And so the thing about Ketu then is the aspect of how much can you trust yourself, because there's been so much conditioning. We've acquired so much from other people and the history and whatever else from the world around us, in a sense, right? Not to mention our own filter from our own past, our own, whether it's past lives, whatever. We've got those filters in place. And so to kind of, take one veil away and then the other and the other. Would you say that is actually Ketu's role, is to help?
That is to detach yourself from all of them. So where you detach completely and stand as a being, separate from all those things, like outside of it all, like to detach. Like that's where the word detach is very used with Ketu, like detachment. But what are you detaching from? Like the word detachment is used a lot.
It doesn't mean just to give everything up and be irresponsible, in a sense.
No, it's not.
Rather, to let go of the stuff which is the illusory stuff.
Yeah, it's which you have, like that thing. Like whenever, like basically detach yourself from all the unfactualness.
To discern, right?
Yeah. Like for example, like that's what I call ego as well. Like, people say like ego is there, like in people, and it causes harm to people and people. Now, what is ego? We have to understand what ego is, like, in the first place. Like ego to me is like the sum total of all of your ignorance.
I love that.
Yeah. Okay. So like whatever you think you know, but you don't know, but you think you know. That's what ego is. Okay. So that's all it is. So like Ketu will detach you from that.
Okay.
So like, I mean, things which like which you thinking like you, I mean, if Ketu will be like, I'll give you an example. Like somebody will tell you like, okay, there is nuclear fusion happening on the sun. Okay. I mean, it's taught in the school book. So you can say, okay, there's nuclear fusion happening in the sun. And either you can believe it just because it's written in the school book, or you can have the Ketu thing like, how do we know? I mean, how can we be sure it's nuclear fusion happening out there? Like, has anyone been there? I mean, no one has been there. No one has been to the sun. Like, I mean, so like when you bring things down to a factual, realistic basis, you can detach yourself from it, because all illusions and stuff are always like not based on factuality. Okay. Whenever you come to know when whatever we have learned or whatever mind programming we have, that thing that this works like this works like that, but does it actually work like that?
Yeah.
No? That's where Ketu comes in.
And so there is just so much agreement.
Yeah.
In our culture, there's just so much agreement about certain things.
Yes.
That it becomes absolute. It's like this is any other way, because everybody agrees that this is the way this thing is.
Yeah,
so
but
this is a bus, and this is a bus, and this cannot be anything else, because we all agree about that. I really, and that's why I think Ketu can prove a little bit tricky at times, because we're being asked to discern something.
Yeah.
Which has so much agreement in the world. So in order to get an insight into that, to have it be something else.
Yeah, but Ketu doesn't mind stepping out of the box first. It doesn't mind that. It doesn't mind stepping away from the crowd. It doesn't mind stepping away from the crowd and saying, no, that's not that. If like, like when like emperor's clothes, like when everybody's saying the emperor's got the clothes, and you can say, no, it doesn't, like it doesn't.
It's exactly like emperor's clothes. I agree.
Yeah. Like you can say like, it's no, it doesn't have the clothes, like it's like that. It's exactly like that. So, but the Ketu gives that courage and that like inner, like that's why it's connected to Ganesh. Like Ganesh, Ketu is connected to Ganesh.
Okay.
Yes.
I know Ketu is connected to Lord Hanuman.
Yeah, no, Ganesh.
Ketu is connected to that. Why Ganesh?
Ganesh, because Ganesh is like, that child which will say, no, that this thing is not bearing anything. Okay, it's going to stick to the facts. It's not going to go by the. So, see, Ganesh has the basic qualities: auspiciousness, wisdom, devotion to the mother principle. Okay. And these are its basic qualities of Ganesh, which Ketu has. So, Ketu is like that childlike, innocence inside of a being. Okay, so if you're accessing that, like when you were when I said when you're 3 or 4 years old, like when you're like at that time, if you were a real child, your first questions will be, who am I, where am I, what is all this? Those will be your basic questions.
Yeah.
And you will try to find the answers of that. Now that basic innocence is required with Ketu. So Ketu is connected with that, So it is not going to go by all the bullshit which is just taken as truth in this world.
So it asks you to come from that place of not knowing, like an openness.
Yeah.
An openness without the background of I know the answer.
Yeah, I know the answer. I know what happens in the sun, and you like a Ketu will always say, I don't know.
Begin with that place.
Yeah, begin with that thing. Then you can know for real. Because when you say I don't know, then you have a chance of actually knowing something for real.
Yes.
Rather than having just a notion of knowing, which has been given to you by somebody, and even they have not gone there, they don't know anything about it. Okay. So
wow.
Yeah, so that is the most important bit about Ketu's functioning.
That is profound. I have to say that is profound. I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because I've never heard anybody say that if you're in your Ketu Mahadasha, Antardasha, Pratyantardasha, try letting go that you know the answer. Try letting go that you have the answers. Maybe it's come from a place of, hey, what would it be like maybe if I didn't believe this was the truth? Maybe what else would become possible? And that's what you're saying. Ketu needs you to do. But I think that is like a massive access to having people understand their Ketu Mahadasha, Ketu Dasha, etc. Because I think that gives a very that gives a place of possibility.
And like that's what takes away your ego. Like you can't have any sense of ego when you're already saying that you don't know.
Humility.
Yeah, like automatically you're saying you don't know, so then the ego is out of the window. Now you detach yourself from your ego anyways now.
Yeah.
So now all that possibilities start for you, like the whole, like the multiverse opens up to you now.
Wow.
Yes. So
that's really, really beautiful. Thank you so much. It's a real gem. I appreciate that so much.
Yes.
You know, because what I'm looking for are the accesses that we can have to make the most of these various time periods.
Yes.
So in a similar way, what would you say Rahu needs you in terms of a state of being? What would you bring to Rahu from that point?
Like Rahu is the journey which starts afterwards. Ketu starts it. Okay, like that. Rahu is the thing which afterwards will discern everything.
Yeah.
Like it'll discern things, like for sure that this is it or this is not it. This is it. This is not it. This is it. This is not it. You know, like everything has to be exact and perfect and real. Okay, not like a notion or a theory or any of these things. It has to be the thing. You know, if it's a holy grail, it has to be the holy grail. It should not be like some cup or something which people are talking about. It's a cup or it's a this or this or that. Like, you know, none of the nonsense.
But that's very different to what I have heard said about Rahu, which is that Rahu confuses you. It creates, it kind of leads you up the tunnel with no cheese, in a sense. The mouse going up a tunnel thinking there's cheese there, but there is no cheese there.
No.
It takes you along, the wrong path.
It is actually, it actually wants to get to the real thing, always. Okay.
After you've maybe gone up a few dead ends, or
no. It always is going for the real thing. Always. That's why it reached, like even in the story, Samudra Manthan story, which will bring it back right now. It got to the nectar. It got to the Amrit.
Yeah.
It was the only one amongst the Asuras which got to it. Yeah, which knew where the Amrit is and what it is. Okay, and the whole thing. Like, okay, so it'll always, it's not taking you down any kind of that thing. You know. And it is going for the inaccessible things, and it's going for it, and it has discernment. And discernment, Rahu will have more the more you have done the first thing first, the Ketu thing first. Rahu thing will not work unless you've done the Ketu thing first.
Got it.
If you've not done the Ketu thing, then Rahu will be like a big sea of illusion then.
Got it. That's why it's known to be the sea of illusion, because the groundwork the foundation hasn't been set.
Ketu comes first. Ketu is the beginning.
But what if you start with the Rahu Dasha earlier in life?
That doesn't matter, but you'll always start with the Ketu in the sense you will always be a kid first. You will be a child first. You will be 2 years.
Regardless,
Yeah, regardless of when, like you will always start as a 2-year or 3-year-old.
Okay.
Where you don't know anything about this world.
Right.
Okay. You always start from that vantage point as a being when you take birth. Yeah. So Ketu part is always what you start with. Okay. So Ketu rules all that life from like when you were like a infant to when you were 16, 17. And when you reach that teenager stage, that's what Rahu rules from that point, 17, 18. You know. So like beings who have not had that proper, like they can get into drugs and all of that at that time.
Yeah.
You know, that's where it's a very, very 17, 18 is a very like a time where people make decisions either way, you know, like that's where a lot of this, you know, confronting happens for most people. Like,
that's very true.
Yes.
So Ketu, when it's together, or Rahu, but I especially want to talk about Ketu when it's together with the sun. In your Kundali.
Yeah.
It is called a Pitru dosh, right?
Yes.
So talk about that. Why?
Okay, then the first thing I'll make a very like a general statement about doshas, like all dosh. Like there is no dosh of any kind. First, number one.
Thank you so much.
Let me just clear it up like once and for all. Like so, we don't talk about with this one and then the nag dosh or the this dosh or that thing, or manglik dosh or this thing. None of these things exist. These things have been just created by the priests in the last few thousand years to make money
Wow.
out of clients. Okay, so because that would mean, oh, you have to get this puja done, this thing done, or you have to get this ceremony done, or you have to
But
get.
didn't Rishi Parashara in his Horror Shastra already begin? Or did he just give us yogas?
No, there is no talk about any dosh. Rishis never talk about dosh.
Okay.
Ever. A Rishi will not even use the word dosh.
Okay.
Okay. Because Rishis only talk about either blessings or curses. Okay. They never talk about dosh. Okay. And like there is no dosh of any kind at all, of any kind like that. It's just like these people have made up these things just to scare people. Like Manglik, for example, they said like if Mars is in first house, second house, fourth house, seventh house, eighth house, 12th house, it's
Yeah.
not Manglik, right? So
Right.
that will be half the population.
Mm-hmm.
And more than that, like then they say Manglik from the moon as well. This is from the ascendant I'm talking about. Then from the moon also they'll say like if these planets are in Mars, so and that'll be another 50% of the population. Then if you keep on doing like that, like 100% of this population of this earth will be Manglik. Like so I mean it's a joke. I mean so that everybody will come and get that thing done from them. I mean this is nothing to do with actual realities of anything. When all this fear psychosis has been done over the last few thousand years, just so that some people can gain from it. It's nothing to do with the actual truth or facts about anything. There's no dosh of any kind with Rahu and Ketu, like of any kind. Like if your Ketu is with Sun, actually it will be easier for you to not have ego, because Sun is one of the planets which creates ego in a being. The sign Leo, the lion, that thing, and I mean it's a good placement. It's not a dosh of any kind.
No, and it also indeed it kind of brings the sun into perspective.
Yes.
Into a balance, but also from a point of view of connecting to the being within.
Within, yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. That's obviously it's going to help. Like any being like which looks at other beings as beings. Like for example, if you look at your father, like, and if you look at it as a father, or if you look at them just like any other person, which is better, to look at them just like any other person or to look at them as the father? Like Jim says, it's always better to look at them like any other person. And that's what Ketu does. Okay. So like, I mean, so then people will say, oh, like you have a problem with your father now. Because, yeah, but it's not, there's no problem actually. Like you actually understand that being better.
And perhaps also, if you take the Ketu aspect, the son could actually have the father be a spiritually inclined individual.
Yeah. And the relationship will not be the same as normal.
No, that's true.
But which is not a problem, because it should not be that anyways.
Yeah.
Like every relationship, which should be being to being.
Yeah.
If you don't give any, because as I've said, like there's only one relationship in this multiverse, and that's guru disciple. No other kind of relationship exists. Okay, I mean it's because like even if your mother is there and you are there and she's telling you something, she's being your guru at the time. Okay, like there's only one, like even Parvati and Shiv.
Yes.
Parvati is disciple and guru is Shiv. Shiv is guru. Like that is also guru disciple relationship. There is no other relationship in this multiverse except guru disciple relationship in reality.
Very nice. Very nice. I like that.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So that's what, and Ketu brings you to these faction truths.
Mm-hmm.
So like it is considered as cutting and detaching and these kind of things, but for your good. Like it's nothing. It's doing for your.
Yes.
It finally benefits you, and you will not have to go through that like Rahu illusion thing, if you have the Ketu thing right.
Indeed. What about the sun with Rahu then? Because again, I mean, currently, I think, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't Donald Trump have his son together with Rahu? It gives a very strong ego, right? What do you say about
vanity. More vanity.
More vanity, yeah?
Vanity. Okay. But that's fine. But again, that can be solved if the Ketu is working fine. Okay. Then Rahu will never give any problems.
Really
Yes.
interesting. So, in fact,
Yeah.
the foundation is Ketu.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
he's
Yeah,
that.
that's why he's on the down. He's connected to the ground. He's the ground.
Yeah.
Rahu is the head on the top.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I mean, if Kundalini, when it rises, like Kundalini rises from the base of the spine, right?
Yes.
So that spinal cord column is all Ketu.
Really,
Yes.
I didn't know that.
Okay. So like Rahu is the head. Kundalini will finally reach here
Mm-hmm.
and deposit the thing which is the Rahu, which is the head. But it'll start from Ketu only.
Right.
So everything, like the basic, the Mooladhara chakra, the way the Kundalini is, which is the that is ruled by Ketu only. Mooladhara chakra.
Muladhara, okay. So, I'd love to talk to you more about the Kundalini. Let's begin with what is the energy of Kundalini actually, because there's a lot said about it, but I'm not really sure exactly what it is.
Yeah, because again, it's like
in terms of Shakti.
because the thing is, misinformation is going to be rife about everything.
Yeah.
There's not a single topic on this earth on which misinformation does not exist. Okay, you can't find me one topic. I mean, like on this earth in which. So the same thing applies to that thing as well. See, Kundalini is something which when you experience yourself, like which happened to me when I was the age of 17, 18, then only you can tell what it is. Without experience, it's like if you're not done something, you have no idea of what. You can never have actually idea by theorizing about it or just talking about it or reading books or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah. So because it's a physical thing, it's not a thing which is not physical. When Kundalini rises, it's a physical sensation. It's a energy which you feel physically. It's nothing in the realms of paranormal. Just like crop circles are real physical things on earth. In the same way, Kundalini is physical. It has like a physical marker, so what it is. I mean, we'll leave that to another discussion, like the whole thing, but I'm just going to say that it is connected to Ketu. It is coiled energy. Okay, it's a coil. Okay, but it only you can only reach it once you have gotten your basic Ganesh Tattva right. Ganesh means like that, which I was talking about, that I don't know. Just say I don't know when you don't know.
Yeah.
Okay, when you get that attitude right, only then you can access Kundalini. Without that, you cannot access that energy. So it is like represented by Durga, Kundalini, because it is inaccessible.
Yeah.
It is only accessible only once you have done that thing. You have gotten the right attitude.
Yeah.
Which is the Ganesh. So that's why Ganesh is always showing guarding the Devi.
Well, the thing about the Kundalini experience is I had something at 7 years old. I write about that in my first book. That's how the book starts. And it happened after a very, very traumatic experience.
Yes.
In which I thought I was actually going to die or be killed.
Yes.
And, and every time I have had a similar intensity of experience arise, which has happened at multiple times, I would never call it Kundalini. It's just that it is just it's such a profound sacred experience. I don't even know.
Yeah, because it's best. That's a very good thing you're doing. You're not ascribing that to Kundalini. That's a very good thing you're doing, because it's not. It is something else. What that experience is totally different. And in females and males, it's different. Okay, so which people don't know. People think that everybody, like in females, it's connected to all the nadis, and it's a overall nadi experience, which is a very different thing. Okay, and if you don't ascribe it to Kundalini, that's you're doing the right thing. Absolutely the right thing. Like by doing that. And those experiences, like Kundalini, like in Shiv, when we have the Shiv archetype, where the third eye is open. So the whole purpose of Kundalini is to take the Kundalini up and open the third eye. Okay, then you reach a state called Shivatva. You reach the Shiv stage, because Shiv is a state.
Yes.
Okay. So it's a state of being. So you have opened the third eye, and then after that, you get a very clear knowing of things. Your discrimination, your discernment becomes perfect. you know, like you can't have anything not clear after that, you know. So that is the thing which is, and like Ketu and Rahu are energies which are related to this process. Okay. Yeah. And that's why, like, if you look at Shiv imagery, like of Shiv, like the serpent is there at the neck. And if you look at Vishnu, the serpent is there on the top of the head. That means Kundalini has risen and it has reached those levels in those beings. And Shiv's third eye is open, that means Kundalini has reached there. And it has opened that gate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that portal. Okay, like, so, like, which is the portal for going through dimensions, higher dimensions, lower dimensions, all dimensions. Okay, so these things are connected to that things, and again, Ketu or Rahu are intimately connected to these things. Okay, so I mean, like, we can just start with that. Like, but I don't want to go too deep into this because this will be very tertiary information, which, like, people will not, you know, like, there are some basics which people need to go into first before. I always think that primary first, then secondary, and then tertiary. Okay.
Yeah, and also I think with the Kundalini aspect is that, you know, because it's such a physical experience, it impacts your nervous system so profoundly.
Yes.
And if your nervous system is not in a healthy state,
ready state
and
for
this is where Yoga Club said, where the detoxification and, you know,
Yes.
the breath becomes so important, because the breath does detoxify, you know, the body in profound ways.
Yes.
And that prepares you for those more peak experiences.
And centering. Yeah, centering. It's, I mean, if you don't have centering,
Yeah.
and you go into any of those things,
Yeah.
you're in for trouble, because any that thing on the left side or the right side creates immediate problems. Like, because the whole thing is in the center. Kundalini rises through the center, in the back of the spine, through the center of the spine, and the third eye is in the middle of the thing. Everything is in the center. Nothing is on the left side or the right side. Like, the whole process happens through the center, not the sun or the moon. So the sun and the moon side, the right side and left side, have to be completely balanced. So the solely lunar balance has to be there. In diet also, like, you know, when people, that's why, like, sometimes people who eat rice only, you know, then they become more lunar, you know, because rice is lunar food.
Yeah.
And if you eat wheat only, wheat is solar food. Okay. So, like, even in your diet, like, you have to, like, make sure that everything is balanced. You know?
That's why we have the Ayurvedic thali,
Yeah.
where you have the chapatis, you have the wheat, you have the rice, you have the
yes, because everything has to be balanced. Like, so it's about balancing.
and the taste as well.
Yeah, that's why, like, not to eat rice at night, because moon is stronger than at night. So one can eat rice in the day only.
Really? Even though it's a lunar food?
Yeah, because then you don't want to double the energy, right?
I see.
Okay. Because you're balancing all the time, you know.
Oh.
Okay,
Wow.
like, so like when it's very sunny and hot, and that's why in South Indian it's very sunny and hot, you can eat rice in the day. You will not feel like eating anything else except that.
Wow.
Okay. When it's very hot and sunny, you only feel like eating rice. You don't feel like eating. But when it's cooler and more that thing, then you can eat roti and stuff. Yeah, I mean, it's easy.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So, I mean, the balancing thing happens automatically. If your body reacts to it, once more you get in tune with the balancing thing. That's why centering is so important.
Right.
And then the diet fits that centering too after that, once you go on that path.
And this is in yoga, we have the Kechri Mudra. I don't know if you're familiar with the
Yes,
Kechri Mudra. That way, where you actually have the tongue going into the top of the palate, the tip of the tongue, or even going back.
Yeah.
So you're actually taking, that's kind of like an aspect of centering. And something that my teachers are very, especially one of my teachers is very, very particular about, you know, engaging the mudra when you're practicing asanas.
Yeah, that's again that'll be a secondary thing once you've done centering already for a long time. I won't suggest to somebody who has not done centering at all, like, and they're doing that. And because your head actually has to go back into 32-degree tilt. Your head has to go back in 32 degrees. Actually, for doing that.
Really?
Yeah. And that will happen if the Kundalini is rising, and your head will automatically tilt back 32 degrees when that is happening, when it goes through this area.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So these things, you don't have to do it. Automatically happen when people were doing Kundalini and that thing. But it has its own, that things, why it is to be done, you know. And because the point is, like, when the Kundalini drops the nectar up in the top, You don't want the nectar to come down to the solar plexus again. So you have to hold it in the head. So that was the purpose for it. But that happens automatically to the being who is doing that. They don't have to learn that mudra because it will happen to them automatically once they're undergoing that process. And to other people who are just doing that mudra without undergoing that process, that means nothing anyway. Okay.
So, Prash, have you had that experience?
Yes, I have had that experience. I was telling you that these are things which happened to me when I was in my university. That's when I because I practiced the Vedic things. I had learned about these Vedic things when I was growing up. Okay. But when I reached that age, 17, 18, I put them to practice. Now let's see what happens. Like you put it to practice. You just put it to practice because you have reached that age, because your body is physically fully formed.
Can you say more about these Vedic things that you'd learned when you were growing up?
Yeah, I mean, if people go to my that thing, blog and like my that thing, they'll come to know more of my things. On my website, lotusocean.net. And I have a blog. Like I've more than 1,000 blogs I've written over the years. So, I mean, that will be a good start.
Give me a synopsis while we're here. I have read some of your blogs.
Yeah.
But in this video, people watching, that's a natural, curious question. It's like, what? Say something about the foundation that you grew up with.
The foundation is which I've already talked about some of the foundations already, like the centering.
Yes.
Then having that I don't know anything. That basic, which you heard before and that thing. And then balancing all the time, the left and right energy, the solar and lunar. Okay, that's a Vedic thing only. The Surya Nadi and Chandra Nadi, which is called the Ida and Pingala. Yeah, to balance it. So because what happens is like if you balance them together, then the Sushumna becomes wider.
Mm-hmm.
So like it might be like a small road, like a country road to begin with, but it becomes like a big highway.
Mm-hmm.
The bigger the Sushumna becomes, the easier it's for the Kundalini. Like, to go, and the less problems you face, like less obstructions you face in your chakras. But even the whole concept of chakras, which is now very famous now, okay, it's a Vedic concept only. Even the names. But it is, again, if you look at anything, it is coming from the Vedic things only. I mean, even what is like called organic food now is a big thing. Whether it's yoga, whether it's Ayurveda, whether it's anything, it's all coming from the Vedic. Okay. How to actually work with the body, the tool you have got, like by centering and by having the right attitude. That's the practice, And then comes that's where it's called Tantra, Mantra, Yantra in the Vedic. Like Tan means body. So that's your Tantra. That's your tool. Yeah. Mantra is like what you're gonna speak. Like mentally or by your mouth. Okay. And Yantra is that thing. The tools you've got.
Say that again. There was a slight break. The yantra is?
Like yantra is the tools. You like, for example, if I play guitar, electric guitar, like that's a yantra. Okay, like electric guitar is a yantra. Like if, for example, if I if they go to my channel, they'll find out about like if I play certain sounds and music, if, like a rainbow might happen if I play a certain kind of sound. If I play a certain kind of sound, lightning storm can happen. Different things can happen, from different sounds and vibrations. So things like that are called yantra. Like even your mobile phone is a yantra. Even this, what we are talking right now on this laptop to each other is a yantra. We're using yantra. And in the Vedic times, there were yantras too. So tantra, mantra, yantra. So those are three things. Like right now, people might be getting knowledge through this medium. Okay. So that is yantra. It's happening through yantra. Tan means your body is sitting there listening to this. You're using your body, which is ears. And mantra will be what you will get from it and what will you mentally repeat from all this. And whether you'll do that is your work. Okay. So tantra, mantra, yantra is happening all the time. Like for example, if you eat food, every time you eat food, it goes to your stomach, and that's where the fire is burning. Okay, so that is a yagya happening, in the Vedic concept of yagya.
Yes.
Now, like the point is, you eat that food and you'll get the energy from that food. Now, what are you going to do with that energy?
Yes.
So that's where the thing is like, so like I went into like what I'm going to do with that energy, and Vedic tells you what to do with that too. Okay, so in order to raise yourself higher. Okay, so all these things are there in the Vedic things, like, but people have to look into it, like, because whatever is there right now in the last 5,000 years, one has to completely discard whatever has happened in the last 5,000 years, because that's all nonsense which has come on top. Okay, which is for different purposes. It's nothing to do with, like, so the texts which are from before that, they carry the real things. Okay, so that's just something which I would like to like. So when we talk about Purans and stuff, the Purans which are made by the Rishi, Ved Vyas. Ved Vyas had done it 5,000 years. He had made everything accessible, like Rama and Mahabharata, the 18 Purans and the Veds. He had made all the knowledge. He had categorized it. He had made it nicely. Okay, so whatever is coming from him, and that part is the thing you can trust on and rely on. Anything after that, you cannot.
Contaminated.
Yeah, like misinformation and all of that. Like last 5,000 years have been really bad in that way on planet Earth. Okay, on this.
And isn't that partly because it was word of mouth and it was conveyed word of mouth?
People went anti-Vedic actually.
People added this stuff.
No, people started going anti-Vedic.
Yes, there was a period when they went against the Vedic.
Vedic, like that's what, like in Vedic there was no arranged marriage, for example. In Vedic, the female always chose. Female was always free to choose whosoever she wants. Okay, and then people started arranged marriage, which is a totally anti-Vedic concept. In Vedic, arranged marriage does not exist. Okay. So in Vedic it was swayamvar, like a female is always free to do. In Vedic, in Vedic the female had all the freedom.
Yeah.
Okay, so now so people have gone against all of that. Okay, so when you start going against that, then obviously you lose that knowledge too. What is the real thing, and that's why all the dark ages have happened. All this so-called dark ages, and people are just emerging from it right now. So we are in that transition phase right now where we are, emerging out of it.
Interesting. You talk about the dark. I want to talk about the fact that Saturn is moving into Mula next week on the 24th, I believe, the 26th actually. It goes in on the 27th of October.
Yes.
And I want to talk about this period. You're talking about we're coming out of it, but I want to talk about Mula being in the galactic center.
Yeah.
It makes Mula Nakshatra very unique because it's the only one that happens to be at the center of the galactic, right?
Yes. And who's it ruled by? And who's the ruler of Mula?
Ketu.
Yes.
Again, we come back to that.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So I really want to continue on that thread because we talk about being in the Kali Yuga, and we talk about the fact that there are people saying we're coming out of it. There are others saying we're still in the thick of it. I don't really know, but what I know is that Saturn is definitely transiting via Mula very shortly, and it's going to stay there for a period of time, and then it's going to move further into.
The thing is, like, when all these things are discussed, when people should actually go by what is actually happening, the facts.
Right,
okay.
Exactly.
Like rather than like saying like somebody's saying this or somebody's saying that, look at the facts. Like, okay, arranged marriage also in India also is finishing now. In the last 40 years, arranged marriage has pretty much come down a whole lot.
It's come down a lot, yeah.
Yeah, and females are again choosing and stuff like that. It's happening. This is the fact. Like, nobody can run away from the. So what I'm saying is, like, whether and all the Vedic things are coming back again. Jyotish is becoming bigger. Like, yoga is already very big. Or like in food, organic food, or everything is coming back. I mean, these things are factually happening. Okay, nobody can deny those things. So and more of the knowledge and stuff, like in the last 10 years even on the internet. So much knowledge has come into, like, light, which was not there, into light. So one should stick to the facts, and one will come to know where one is, and what is going on actually. Like it's nothing to do with what, like some people misinterpret the text and say that Kali Yuga lasts for 432,000 years. Because because they don't understand how to read the figures and numbers. They don't know that is hours or years or what are they talking about. They're talking about. So like there will be always misinformation, but best thing is to go by one's own things which one can see, and that thing really in this world right now itself, the facts of the matter, like what happened to me factually by my own thing, I know about that. Okay, so I can look into the fact of that, or what is happening as a whole on a collective level. Also, one can look into the facts of that. Like whether it's happening, whether internet has come or not. Like I mean, like 30, 40 years ago, I mean, a lot of knowledge was not reachable to people. Whatever is happening right now, even between you're taking this interview and is going to people, it's not possible 15 years ago.
No.
Right?
And no, indeed. And I think the point that we have to be decisive about applying the situation to our own.
Yeah.
Funny thing going on with the sound. It's like these clicky things going on with the sound.
Yeah, I heard something from there. Yeah.
This is better. So, okay, I'm gonna try again. We can edit this out.
Yeah.
If it happens again, because it's very disturbing to the ear.
Yes.
What I wanted to say about that, or rather ask about that, Paresh, was with Mula being in the core of the galactic, in the galactic center of the center of the galaxy. Yes. How do you, that combined with the Ketu aspect, and that combining with the energy of Saturn.
Okay, so
and yesterday, sorry, just to finish that, yesterday, Islamic State was defeated in Raqqa by the Allied forces.
Yes.
Which I think is interesting with these movements that are about to happen.
Yeah, what is happening? Like, I mean, Saturn is about realism. Okay. Saturn is about realism. Like, Saturn is all about realism. It's a planet which only deals with realism. Okay. Now, add that to the fact of Mula deals with root facts.
Mood, yeah.
You combine that with realism. Okay, then people will have to come out of any kind of nonsensical illusions or delusions will be shattered. Okay. So people have to be ready for that. In that Saturn going into Mula. That energy. Like, because, I mean, anything which is real will come through, which is not real will not. Okay. So people who are like trying to spread lies, misinformation, and all of that around media, which are always there, a lot of people doing that. So it'll be a tough time for them. I would say it'll be a tough time for just media in general, because that's where most of the lies and nonsense comes out from. So, it's like, and people are gonna use like the alternative media and stuff to get to the truth themselves, because they would like to get to the truth and real factual truth, not a bunch of lies, so it's getting to that like core root level of that thing. And that's why I think the Vedic will come back into, because that's where the core root, and that was the thing all over because I've looked into mythology of so many things like Nordic and the Native American Indians and Egyptian and everything. And everything always is Vedic only. I've never seen any mythology or anything which is not coinciding with the Vedic thing. Like, I've never come across anywhere on earth anything which is, whether it's a concept of the realms or the worlds or anything, like it's all exactly the same. Like, so the real core truth knowledge will come into play with Saturn going into Mula. It surely will. Like, and as it has gone through Scorpio, a lot of hidden things have come out anyways. For people who are paying attention and stuff, like there are a lot of truths which have been revealed, already here. So this fog is clearing up. Let's say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the same thing again with Mula. Why does Mula rule? Why is it ruled by Ketu?
Yeah. Because again, the thing is that since if you have to get out of the cycle of birth and death, on this plane, then you have to get through that gate. You have to be able to get to the Mula gate. Otherwise, you can't go out. So, and Ketu is the Moksha Karaka, so it should be, so yeah, so that connection is there anyways. Yeah.
Amazing. So we've gone a good long while now. I think an hour and a half at least.
Yes. I mean, this is fine for today, and we can do whenever, like, there are other things later.
Yeah, I would love to do that. Do you want to talk about? I mean, I don't know whether you would be interested in talking about specifics of the placements, like the axis, the Rahu Ketu axis. If you take Aries, Capricorn.
No, I would rather talk about people first, like learning some basics. I mean, I've said that on the Kapil show as well.
Yeah.
That people should learn some basics and get themselves ready. Like, they should not go into sciences like Jyotish until they're ready. As far as I'm concerned, I'm very, very firm in my belief about those things, that like one should go into things only when ready, properly ready. Like people should be going into centering and all of these things first before they actually, because all of that, otherwise information will just confuse them. Yes, they can get a lot of information, but the point is that, like, they can't handle it, they can't process it, they can't retain it. Okay. So what's the use of that kind of thing? Like,
it just burns you out.
it burns you out, and it creates confusion. It creates confusion for you, and you are like, oh yeah, like I learned that, but I learned this now. How is this thing? Like, this is just clashing with each other. What's going on now? Like, you just get like that,
Right.
Yeah. And it's not useful for and we are all about the self-discovery, not like self-burning or self like on the channel, like,
More about empowering yourself to grow.
Yeah.
Grow and become more and more of who you truly are.
Yeah. And to be able to actually retain knowledge, like not just become that thing, where you are an information junkie, and just like getting this information, this information, and then like nothing is happening for yourself. Really. It's not knowledge. There's a difference between knowledge and information. People have to understand that knowledge is something which you can apply for yourself. Information is something which is just general thing, like it's nothing to do with you.
There's no discernment in information.
Yeah. And knowledge is something which you can actually practically apply for yourself. Yeah. And improve yourself and go higher and evolve yourself for real. That's knowledge. Other thing is just like, like whatever it is for, like, like there's like, because this is an information age right now more, so people have been bombarded with a lot of information, but not knowledge. Like, so, and that's why their lives are still no better than they should be, considering how much information is there. So people are still very confused and still very that thing. And in fact, like, so like that thing has not happened, that like the kind of, like upliftment or ascension which should have happened, considering how much is there available right now. So
awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. That was really, really, really enlightening. I appreciate your time.
Yes.
And you sharing your knowledge.
But it was easy with you. Like, it was easy to do it with you. Like the talk, I was like, it was not like.
It wasn't hard work. Good. I'm glad to hear it. Thank you so much.
Yes. I mean, whenever like you want to do it next, and you can just let me know, whatever.
I will. Yeah.
Yeah.